What do you know about TM racing? They're expensive, rare to the sight, exotic. They're just another small, quirky boutique manufacturer like Beta or Riehu.
I mean, that's what I thought. In reality, ignorance is a fool's sin. A sin I had been guilty of as well.
12 consecutive Supermoto World Championships, multiple Enduro World Championships spanning different classes all the way from the 80s up to modern days. They rose through the ranks together with their riders and even drivers, with names like Andrea Verona and Max Verstappen related to their brand. The more I learned, the more I realized how much I didn't know. How big of an impact TM has had on the motorcycling industry, on racing, on people.
This is not just another underdog story. This is the underdog story your favorite underdog grew up reading.
This is the story of TM Racing. A story that traces back to two childhood friends and the garage. Back in the 70s, Claudio Flenghi and Francesco Battistelli. Their love for two wheels could only be matched by the dream of building their own. Mr. Engine and Mr. Frame, as they later got nicknamed, thought they could create something different, something great.
They wanted to race on their own creation, but this hobby project quickly ballooned. You see, their first prototype was actually pretty darn good. That's when Moto TM was founded.
Up to this day, their name comes from the two sons of the founders, Thomas and Mirko. That same year, at the Milan Motorcycle Show, the bikes caught people's eyes and things moved quickly. Soon after, they were already pumping out a couple hundred motorcycles every year in their new industrial facility. After a furious start, Battistelli ended up leaving the company.
The reason... I'm honestly not sure. In his place came Gastone Serafini, their original factory and test rider, and assumed the role of CEO.
Role that he's still exercising today. The company quickly iterated to add water cooling, change their suspension setups and airbox designs. The bikes were a constant work in progress. Now, the 80s didn't come without their controversies. Look, if you think TM is a small manufacturer now, imagine back in the day. The problem was, when they issued model updates, they wouldn't reflect to all dirt bikes worldwide. First they'd come to Italy and then slowly trickle down. But in a world without the internet, how could you know? Allegedly, these shenanigans weren't even TM's idea. They were their US importers.
You see, it seems like this importer asked TM to delay updates for their foreign bikes, as that allowed them to use older parts, which made the bikes cheaper. Now, they would never say that officially. In theory, an 85 model should have been the same between Italy and the USA. But it wasn't. Allegedly.
The 90s represented a defining decade for the manufacturer. First, their iconic blue color was set in stone after iterating through red and pink. Those years, the Italians managed to dominate small displacement two-stroke competitions. They built the first dirt bike with a production hydraulic clutch. This is when their engine craftsmanship rose to a level of perfection. Their bikes had the highest specific power output of any market offering. They managed to master the art of the two-stroke. In fact, in '99, they became an engine supplier for gas. Look, their engines weren't for everybody. But in the context of racing and outright performance, TM was, at times, in a league of their own. They became the gold standard. If you were to open up their trophy cabinet, you'd see they won the World Enduro Championship in '85 and '87. During those times, this discipline also featured an 85cc class.
Here, TM not only dominated, but at one point, it made up for 70% of the field. 70% of riders in this class were using the Italian machines. They had no competition.
It took the FIM removing this class altogether to stop TM from winning even more. During modern times, they won their classes in 2015, 16, 18 and 19. And in 2020, with Andrea Verona, one of the riders, they helped rise through the ranks. If that sounds impressive, what I'm about to tell you trumps it by a mile. Since the 2000s, TM had been trying to conquer the world of supermoto. They tried again and again, but kept failing. And most importantly, learning. They never gave up. And in 2014, the Italians came to the grid with a motorcycle that was completely out of the ordinary. A supermoto that had never seen the dirt. Unlike all others, this was not a converted motocross bike. They shoved the fuel tank towards the rear of the bike, leaving more breathing room for the airbox. This was a big risk to take. In fact, even today, TM's supermoto bikes are bespoke, purpose-made tools for the job. Safe to say, this approach worked, better than anyone could have imagined. For 12 consecutive years, TM Racing has been unbeatable in S1GP, one of the greatest win streaks in motorcycling history.
Comes across the line to win his second Grand Prix of the season and extend his championship lead.
This little story says a lot about the philosophy behind this boutique manufacturer. They're not here to cut corners, to spare any expense.
They're not the Ferraris of the dirt bike world, they're Pagani. Not for everyone and not everyone's dream. But for those who know, who appreciate the craftsmanship, there is nothing like a TM. They develop and build all of their engines in-house. They took this practice to a literal art form and carry that flag with pride.
Just like the art of clicking that subscribe button. Cheers. Let's be clear, these achievements are amazing, but it takes understanding the broader picture to realize that amazing is an understatement.
Because for all of their success, TM is still an incredibly small manufacturer. In 2018, they manufactured 1.3 thousand bikes while employing 70 people. That's it. Some math says that at an average of 11,000 euros a piece, the company would have made roughly 14 million. If you take a 10% margin after material costs, that leaves you with little over 1 million a year.
Obviously, these numbers are taken from the abyss of my rear end. From what I found, Italy doesn't require private companies to publicly disclose their earnings. But no matter how you put it, TM Racing is still a small company. Suddenly, when you look at their scale, them dominating Supermoto and winning in Enduro is a marvel.
And it was never just smooth sailing. The 2000s were challenging times for the Italian manufacturer. Previous to that, they had noticed the Japanese dabbling in four-strokes, and TM found themselves standing at a crossroad. On one hand, they had mastered the art of the two-stroke throughout the 90s. But if Japan was right, they risked losing the four-stroke train altogether. Lose that and you might lose your company. But invest money into four-strokes and what if that doesn't work? What if that ends up terminating the company? Such decisions at their scale can be life or death. In 2000, when they debuted their prototype four-stroke in the Italian Enduro Championship, a sigh of relief could be heard from Italy. They came in second place. Their new platform worked. The four-stroke game was on.
But this was not the end of the saga. You see, as the late 2000s approached, another fundamental shift popped on the scene. Fuel injection.
The decision was easier this time, as environmental regulations meant that sooner or later, fuel injection was going to become the norm. But this didn't make their lives any easier. In fact, TM's early FI systems made for some dark times in the company's history. Look, everybody struggled with it at first, even the big Japanese conglomerates. Now, imagine how it felt like for a team about the size of a school classroom. But they pulled through. They managed on their own to figure it out. And here's the thing, for such a small team, the engine was not the only matter at hand. Also during the 2000s, TM looked towards Japan and noticed their shift towards aluminium frames. After long deliberations, they decided this was the future. In order to develop their first commercial variant, they built 15 prototype frames, cut from huge, solid blocks of aluminium. Imagine how much that cost, and how easy it is to screw up.
So in 2008, when their first aluminium frames went on the market, people loved them. And again, TM dodged the bullet. Look, they could never afford to lose. Simple as that.
Invest all your money into frames or engines? At their scale, failure could have meant game over. But in their quest for perfection, for improvement, TM had to keep iterating. They had to innovate, and they did.
Now, not all of their dreams ended up coming true. Admirably, they never boxed themselves in with Supermoto and Enduro. That's how, in 2013, TM went racing the Dakar.
Now, they could have simply taken the 450, slapped some tanks and a tower, and called it a day. For a first-year effort, nobody would have blamed them. So what did TM do? They built a bespoke rally bike, the S13 prototype Dune Racer. Because if they were to sign up for anything, they wanted to be the best. And this was the only way. With little to no testing, they managed to finish their first year, but not without hiccups. Ultimately, the team didn't realize the path that laid ahead. They were unprepared. But again, they learned, and came back in 2014. This time, the bike was even more bespoke. They built new plastic tanks, carbon fairings, and a redesigned titanium exhaust. The navigation gear wasn't slapped on, it was built as part of the structure of the bike. And TM was going places, sitting in 15th overall. Until the marathon stage came about and a rear tire issue meant that the Italians had to withdraw. 1 year later, they developed the bike again. They were never complacent, never stopped evolving. The thing is, the Dakar is a hugely expensive endeavor. Aprilia got to find that out the hard way, and TM did as well. An endeavor that, if you're not winning, gets hard to justify. So TM never went much further in the sport. During the 2010s, Dakar was not the only coin the Italians put in the machine. TM decided to give circuit racing a go as well and enter the Italian Moto 3 Championship. As long as the rules allowed them to use and develop their own power units, they were up there. But the governing body had other ideas, and when engine freedom was taken away, TM retired from road racing as well.
You see, the Italians had always operated at a small scale, and that can pose some pretty particular challenges. They could never really afford to get the best riders in the sport, so they had to do something else.
Grow and support young talent. Kids that nobody had put hope in. TM changed that. That's how many of their world championships came about. Andrea Verona is a good example, and even these days, they have a 13-year-old racing for them in the 1 to 5 categories. More than building bikes, TM Racing managed to build up people, their careers. To put trust in someone when nobody else was willing to. Sure, in a way, they had no other option. But this doesn't take anything away from their contribution.
Just like this segue shouldn't take away from the video. If you wish to support us directly, we have started a Patreon page linked in the description where you can get updates on upcoming projects in written form. Cheers, back to the video.
Add up all the trophies, the sweat, the glory, all the achievements the Italians managed to gather on 2 wheels. And you're still far from touching on their legacy.
Because there is one other aspect of TM you might not know. In 2020, Claudio, one of the 2 childhood friends who dared to dream about TM, passed away. Now, I'm going to spell out some names. Alex Albon, Charles Leclerc, George Russell, or Max Verstappen. Not 2-wheeled names, but names you've most likely heard before. What do all of these have in common?
Well, TM is known for top-of-the-line motorcycles, but arguably, there is another domain where their reputation is even holier. Back in the 70s, Claudio had a wild idea. Since they worked so hard on their 2-strokes, he tried fitting one inside a kart. The rest was history, as their engines quickly became the bar in karting. Their performance and reliability was unbeatable. Even today, their engines are used in world championships. And all those Formula 1 drivers? They used TM engines. In fact, in 2013, in his last ever karting year, Max Verstappen won the world championship on board a kart equipped with a TM Racing engine.
And now, going to add the first round of the 2013 CIK FIA World Championship, Max Verstappen wins it!
You can say a lot about their bikes, about their practices, but one thing nobody can ever hold against TM. Their engine builders are some of the best. And since the 70s, this fact never changed much. stage. These days, TM Racing expanded and improved their facilities, but at its core is still a small boutique manufacturer, one that's never stopped innovating.
They released their two-stroke TBI system 3 years ahead of KTM. They still offer motocross, enduro and supermoto bikes in both two-stroke and four-stroke form.
In fact, they are the only manufacturer that, up to this day, allows you to choose between a carburetor and fuel injection on their two-strokes. They have their place. Sure, the mainstream might not be that place, but it doesn't have to be. The story of TM is arguably a misunderstood one, but once you see how much this little company managed to achieve with such little resources, it makes you wonder, what could they build with better funding? Who knows?
But one thing is clear, their quest for perfection and artistry in engine design will never be forgotten. This legendary reputation will never fade away.
It's a company that made championship-winning bikes and engines. But even more so, it grew together and made champions as well. And that's a CV that not many can brag about.
Thanks for watching. Make sure to check out our other videos on another small manufacturer and how they had a less fortunate fate. Alta Motors. Have a good one. Bye.